Despite his global fame, Brad Pitt always found joy in the simplest things: walks in the park, the rustling of leaves, fresh air. This day was no exception. He sat on a bench, enjoying the warm rays of the spring sun, trying to distract himself from the troubling thoughts related to his latest filming project. His mind was finally clearing from the hustle and bustle, and he simply enjoyed the moment of peace. The park in downtown Los Angeles was a lively place, people walking their dogs, children skating, and somewhere in the distance, someone was flying a kite. Pitt always loved these moments when he could be just a part of everyday life, without the blinding flashes of cameras and the attention of the crowd. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a little girl sitting on the bench opposite. She was unusual. Unlike the other children, who were engrossed in their phones or tablets, she was drawing on a piece of cardboard. Next to her was a small box with a handwritten sign on an old piece of paper: "Help raise money for painting supplies." Brad couldn't help but notice how seriously she was focused. Her drawings weren't just child's play. The cardboard was covered with bright yet deep drawings, full of emotion. Inspired by her sincerity, Pitt stood up and walked over to the girl. "Hi," he said with a smile. "What are you drawing?" The girl looked up and shyly smiled. "I'm drawing a picture for my mom. She loves pink flowers, and I want them to be especially bright. But I don't have any paint, just pencils. If I have enough money, I can buy real paint." Brad sat down beside her. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice who was sitting next to her. "Your pictures are really beautiful," Brad said, looking at her drawings. "I'm sure you have a lot of talent." The girl blushed with surprise but responded modestly. "Thank you. I love to draw. When I grow up, I want to be an artist. But my mom doesn't have enough money to buy paint. That's why I'm here. I only need a little bit. I hope I'll raise enough." Brad felt a slight tension in her words. He knew how hard it could be to be a little artist, especially when you didn't have the means to develop. His own path in film started with not always knowing how to find support. "How much do you need?" Brad asked, pulling out his wallet. "Just $50, to buy some good paint and brushes. That'll be enough for a few pictures." Brad opened his wallet and handed her the money. "This will help you not only buy paint but maybe even make your dream come true," he said. "You should keep drawing. And if you need more help, just let me know." The girl looked at the money in surprise, then at his face. She couldn't believe that someone as famous as him just came over and helped her. "Thank you," she said, barely holding back tears of joy. "Thank you so much." Brad smiled. "You're welcome. But the most important thing is to keep drawing. Your paintings could be great. You won't give up, right?" "No, I'll keep drawing. I promise." Brad stood up, and the girl continued with her drawings. He felt that he hadn't just met this girl by chance. Something in her eyes, in her sincerity, in her dream had touched him. After the encounter, Brad couldn't forget Lily for a long time. She reminded him how important it was to support and inspire those who want to change the world with their talent. He realized that sometimes even a small act of kindness could be the nudge that opens the door to a dream. But he didn't know that this moment would mark the beginning of a real change in the girl's life. Thus began Lily's story, the girl who dreamed of becoming an artist, and her journey, which was closely intertwined with the unexpected help of Brad Pitt. Few weeks later, Brad Pitt couldn't shake off the memories of the little girl with the cardboard drawings. He often thought about her sincere dream of becoming an artist and how, despite all the hardships, she kept drawing, hoping that one day her work would be noticed. And even though Brad was busy with filming and preparing for new projects, that meeting had left an imprint on his soul. He couldn't just forget about Lily and her dream. One day, while passing by an art gallery in the city center, Brad stopped and thought. He remembered how he had told the girl that her paintings could be great. He recalled her saying she wanted to become an artist, but didn't have the right materials to work with. That's when Brad decided he needed to help her, and it was time for the next step. He walked into the gallery and met one of his acquaintances, Jason, a well-known art dealer who often organized exhibitions for young artists. Jason was a man who was always on the lookout for new talent. He loved supporting not only established artists but also emerging ones, giving them a platform to showcase their work. Brad knew that this was the perfect place to talk about Lily. "Hey, Jason," Brad said as he entered the gallery. "I've got an interesting project for you." Jason smiled when he saw Brad and invited him to sit down. "Got something in mind?" he asked, intrigued. "I met a girl. An artist. Very talented. But she lives in poverty and can't afford good materials for her work," Brad began. "I'd like you to take a look at her paintings. I think you'll find it interesting." Jason raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Which girl are you talking about?" he asked, clearly surprised. "She's only 10 years old. But her paintings, they're full of emotion. They're not like what other kids draw. I'm sure you'll see the potential," Brad continued. "I think she deserves a chance." Jason paused and then nodded. "All right, let's take a look. I'm always open to new ideas. Bring her in. We'll do something interesting." The next day, Brad brought Lily to the gallery. She was a little nervous as she entered because it was her first introduction to the art community. Everything seemed so big and important, yet so distant from her small world filled with cardboard and watercolor paints. When Jason saw her work, his expression changed. He was impressed. Unexpectedly, he saw not just childlike drawings, but paintings that told stories, paintings that had a deep atmosphere. Each of Lily's works was filled with color and emotion. There was something unusual about her paintings, something sincere and real. "This is really interesting," Jason said, looking at one of her paintings, which depicted abstract pink flowers gradually merging into the night sky. "She's not just drawing, she knows how to convey feelings." Lily stood beside Brad, trying to hide her nervousness. Her gaze was fixed on the floor, and she couldn't believe that her work had caught the attention of an adult, especially such a renowned art dealer like Jason. "This is just the beginning," Lily whispered. "I draw because I like it. But I never thought anyone would notice my paintings." Jason walked over to her and gently said, "You know, there are no coincidences in art. Your work has potential. I'm willing to help you showcase it at one of our exhibitions. We can organize your first solo show." Lily couldn't believe her ears. A solo exhibition. It was so far from anything she had ever dreamed of that it was hard to even imagine. "But I only draw on cardboard, I don't have real canvases or brushes," she said shyly. Brad smiled. "You're not looking for excuses not to start. You draw because you love it. And we'll help you. You deserve a chance, Lily." After Lily agreed to the offer, Jason gave her some technical advice, asked her to make a few new pieces for the exhibition, and promised to arrange everything for her first solo show. Brad promised to help her buy the materials and assured her he would be there every step of the way. As soon as Lily left, her heart was full of happiness and excitement. She couldn't believe that her paintings would soon be exhibited in a gallery and that her dream was becoming a reality. It all happened so quickly, so unexpectedly. But most importantly, she felt that her work, her passion for drawing, had finally been appreciated. For Brad, meeting Lily was something more than just an act of kindness. He saw how easy it is to miss an opportunity and forget about those who might change the world with their art. He knew that despite her shyness and fears, Lily was ready to take her step into the big world of art. This meeting marked the beginning of a new path for her, a path that led her into the art community, where her paintings began to attract attention and gain recognition. 2 months had passed since Lily first stepped into Jason's art gallery. In that time, she didn't just paint, she lived art. She breathed it. Her days were filled with colors, canvases, strange ideas, and endless attempts to express things that couldn't be put into words. But one night, staring out the studio window, Lily felt a strange emptiness. It was as if ordinary paintings could no longer express what she was feeling. She watched the reflection of neon lights in the puddles beneath the rain and suddenly realized, her next work wouldn't be a painting. It would be something else. She started collecting things most people would call trash: old books, plastic, shards of mirrors, wire, pieces of wood, children's shoes, dried flowers, even a broken teacup someone had once given her. From all of it, she began assembling something strange, ugly, and yet deeply compelling. It looked like a massive cocoon, as if someone had tried to break free but got stuck between the past and the future. The next day, she showed the piece to Jason. At first, he said nothing. He just looked. Walked around it. Then again. "This is," he began, then paused. "This is something. I called it silence after the scream," Lily said quietly. "It's about what happens inside a person when everything breaks inside, but on the outside, you still smile. About how hard it is to speak when no one's listening." Brad Pitt, who had just walked into the gallery, heard her words and stopped. He looked at the piece, and for a few seconds, his face changed. He knew that feeling. All too well. He remembered hiding pain behind roles, interviews, events. Remembered the loneliness behind golden statuettes. "It's powerful," he finally said. Jason nodded, still studying the work. "This is contemporary art, in the truest sense," he said. "I want this to be the centerpiece of your exhibition." The exhibit was scheduled for the following week. The gallery transformed. One of the white walls was covered in Lily's vibrant, life-filled paintings, but in the center of the room, under a spotlight, stood it. The art piece. Silence after the scream. The crowd that gathered was diverse: journalists, collectors, students, critics. Everyone wanted to see the young girl artist, discovered by Brad Pitt. But no one expected what they saw. People entered, stopped, and went silent. Some stared for a long time, some for only a second. Some walked away in tears. Others debated. An elderly critic whispered to a colleague, "I thought it would be cute. But this, it's terrifying in its honesty." An hour after the opening, an art critic from the New York Times posted a photo of the piece on Instagram with the caption, "This was created by a girl. 10 years old. And she's talking to us about things adults are afraid to say out loud. This is more than just art. This is a mirror." The post went viral. By the end of the night, over 300 people had visited the gallery. Lines formed outside just to get a glimpse of the piece. Later that evening, Lily hid behind a curtain. Being the center of attention was hard for her. She watched how people reacted to her work and at one point, whispered to Brad, "This is strange. I just told them how much it hurts. And they're listening." He rested a hand on her shoulder and quietly said, "And that's what art is all about." Right after the exhibition, everything changed. Lily's name suddenly became a brand. Vogue, Art Forum, and LA Weekly wrote about her. Art schools discussed "the girl who broke the mold," and her art piece, Silence After the Scream, appeared on the front page of ArtNet with the headline, "What if the future of art is already here, and it's only 10 years old?" Jason's gallery barely managed the flood of offers. Collectors from all over the world sent in bids. One offered $250,000 for the art object. But Lily refused to sell. She said, "I can't sell pain. It's a part of me." Jason nodded with respect. But then came other calls. Contracts. PR. Foundations. Photo shoots. Brands that wanted to collaborate. Endless meetings began. Adults with smooth talk, expensive suits, and smiles that didn't reach their eyes spoke to her like she was an investment. Lily didn't understand why they wanted to dress her in designer clothes and make her hold a paintbrush just for the photo. "Can I just paint?" she quietly asked Jason one day. He looked away. That was the moment he realized he had pulled her too far into the adult world. That's when Brad stepped in. He came to the studio when he found out Lily hadn't painted in 3 weeks. She was sitting in a corner, turning a blank piece of paper in her hands. Just whiteness. Emptiness. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I don't know what to paint. Everything I want to make, they don't like it." She nodded toward the stack of letters and offers. "Do you want them to like it?" Lily thought for a moment. "I want them to feel what I feel. Not just hang it on their walls for status." Brad sighed. He knew this path. His world, cinema, also sometimes became a marketplace. A list of roles, box office numbers, magazine covers and posters. But he knew how important it was to keep your voice. "Wanna see something?" he asked. He took her out of town to a place few knew about, his workshop, a small wooden cabin on a hill. No cameras. No press. No agents. Just silence, a lake view, and walls covered in strange drawings, notes, and photographs. He admitted that sometimes he wrote, painted, carved wood, just to stay sane. "This is my place of truth," he said. Lily walked around the room, ran her finger over a dusty frame with a quote. "Art isn't what gets sold. It's what remains after everything is sold." "Who said that?" she asked. "I did. When I realized I almost forgot why I started all this." They stayed until sunset, silently looking out at the lake. Then Lily pulled a notebook from her backpack and began to draw. Not for galleries. Not for the media. Just because she felt the brush connect with her heart again. The next day, she returned to the city and brought a new piece to the gallery. It wasn't a painting, it was a letter. In pen, on ordinary paper, Lily wrote. "I'm grateful for everything that's happened. But please, don't turn me into a product. I'm an artist. Not a cover." Jason hung the note at the entrance of the gallery. And from that day on, everyone knew, if you want to buy Lily's work, you're not just buying a painting. You're entering a conversation. A year had passed. Lily's name was no longer confined to the art world. Her works were featured in magazines, discussed in universities, and during a TED panel, she was referred to as a voice of the sincere generation of artists who feel more than they speak. But she remained the same. She still lived with her mom in the same apartment, took the subway, loved caramel popcorn, and spent her weekends painting by the waterfront. Only now, children would come up to her, not to ask how much a painting cost, but simply to say, "Can I just sit next to you?" Lily had become a symbol of something new, not loud or glamorous, but deep. Art that didn't need to scream to be heard. Art where pain wasn't sold, but transformed. One day, she was invited to Berlin for the Contemporary Art Biennale. A major festival. Her work, a new art piece titled, "It Doesn't Matter Who You Are, If You Can Feel," was given its own room. It was something entirely new, walls made of mirrors where visitors could use markers to write down things they had never dared say out loud. Within 2 days, there wasn't a single clean surface left. Someone wrote, "I'm afraid of my father. I love him, but he left. I want to live, but I don't know how." Lily walked among the words without touching any of them. She just watched. That evening, Brad flew in to see her, without telling her in advance. He stood in the doorway of the room, watching as grown adults wrote their most vulnerable truths on the mirrors, tears in their eyes. "This isn't just art," he told her later. "It's therapy for those who never dared to be themselves." "You know, I used to think being an artist meant painting beautifully," Lily said quietly. "But now I realize, being an artist means not being afraid to be real." They sat at a cafe by the river. No cameras, no galleries, just the two of them. One, a man who had played hundreds of roles in his career, but had found the courage to help a girl play her one true part. And the other, a girl who once stood in a park holding a sign, raising money for paints. "You didn't have to stop that day," she said. Brad smiled. "Sometimes you don't have to. You just want to. Because you see in someone who you once dreamed of being." A week later, Time published an article. She didn't become famous. She became real. On the cover, Lily. Not in an expensive outfit, but in an old sweater stained with paint. Beside her, a small piece of the very art object where it all began, silence after the scream. Today, that piece isn't held in a private collection or displayed in a museum. It stands in the center of a children's art school, funded by the foundation Lily and Brad created together. A school where kids aren't just taught how to paint, but how to listen to themselves. On the wall at the entrance is a quote. "Every brush can become a voice. The most important thing is not to be afraid to speak."